in order to appreciate and understand reconciliation, to understand the Battle of Blood River, to understand who we are as a people, you must understand where we come from. So where do we come from? So I'm going to give you a quick history lesson, if you don't mind. Okay? I know that you are you history experts in your own right, but let's do a quick history. Let's start with a date that we know very well from our school, which is 1652, and that's the arrival of a Dutch explorer, a Dutch traveler, a Dutch business person, a young man, the age of 32 years old, who arrived in South Africa, and his name was Jan van Riebeeck. Okay? Jan van Riebeeck. He was 32 years old. He was a young man geweest. Young man. And he comes and he establishes a refreshment station on behalf of his company. His company is called the DOC, or in English, the Dutch East India Company. And that is the start of what we call Dutch rule or Dutch occupation in South Africa. And that went on for a number of years. We'll do the calculation of the years in a minute. But that was followed by the arrival of the British in 1795. So this was the Dutch. Then the British arrived with their ships in Muizenberg in Cape Town. The Battle of Muizenberg it was called. Not too far from where I was born in Cape Town. Battle of Muizenberg in 1795. Then there was another battle. The British had two bites at the cherry. They came back in 1806 to the Battle of Blouberg there in Milnerton. Those of you that know Cape Town, on the beaches of Milnerton there, Blouberg Strand as they call it, was the definitive battle, and the British took over South Africa. How long did the British stay in power? Well, that's an open question. Let me give you the next date, 1961. What happens in 1961? You will know from the earlier one. South Africa becomes an independent republic. Right? So the RSA, Republic of South Africa, starts on the 31st of May, 1961. So South Africa gets rid of its dependence on who? The British. And they tell the British basically go home. Okay, ons is nou 'n onafhanklike republiek. We are a sovereign nation. So say the Afrikaners under the leadership of the then Dr. Hendrik Verwoerd. You would know the name, depending on the audience. I mean, Dr. Verwoerd is the incarnation of evil, because he's the father of apartheid, they would say, some would say. And if you call him a genius, then other people will say you're absolutely out of your mind. Back to identity. Yeah? There's a date that we need to remember, 1948. What happened in 1948? That's when the National Party won the elections, and they came into power in South Africa, and they instituted the policy of apartheid, or separateness. Right? Now, give you a couple of more dates for our timeline, and then we can see how these things stitch together. 1910. Oh, my board is now getting too small here. What happens in 1910? 1910 is the Union of South Africa is formed. Really? What was that? That was a union of the two white groups in the country. The Afrikaner group and the British group. So the Dutch-oriented Afrikaner group, they wouldn't like you to say that too much about them, because they say, no, we no longer Dutch, we are Afrikaners in our own right. Another debate. And the British. Why is 1910 important? So there's a union here. Give you another date or another event. The Anglo-Boer War. Have you heard of this? The Anglo-Boer War. It's now called the South African War. Uh, these wars, these battles are always renamed depending who's telling the story. Bottom line is there was blood and tears. The British and the two white groups in the country, the British group and the Afrikaner group, were at loggerheads with each other. There were two Anglo-Boer wars. The first Anglo-Boer war was 1881, and the Afrikaners won that war. Hulle gewen. They beat the British, hands down. The British did their homework. And the second war between these two groups was 1899, almost 20 years later. And this time the British won the Afrikaners. But how did they win that? What did they do? This is another pain in the history of our country. The British put the Afrikaner women and children into concentration camps. And guess where Hitler learned about concentration camps? Yeah, in South Africa. His chief concentration camp guy practiced his lessons against the Herero in what we now call Namibia, with the genocide that happened there around the same time. So, it is still the case today that English-speaking whites, who will be the British-oriented whites, and the Afrikaans-speaking whites don't easily sit at a table because they have different memories of this battle and this history. But, big but, in 1910, these two white groups decided to bury their differences, to reconcile, we use that as a word today, and formed a unity government or a union of South Africa. And they said, listen, man, we've got a common enemy. Our common enemy are these black people here, and they outnumber us. So let us join forces, let us bury our differences, form a government, and then, okay, let's divide the country. The country is divided into four. So we, the British, we will take the two seaports because, we are seafaring people. So we'll take Cape Town and we'll take Natal. And you, the Afrikaners, you can take the Vrystaat, Orange Free State, and the Transvaal. And the Afrikaners had already established the Republic of the Vrystaat and the Transvaal Republic. So that was the deal. Then what they did, is that the two white groups, they decided that they must make sure that South Africa, as they define it, must be for white people only. And so they passed a law to make South Africa for white people only. And it was called, one of the first laws that they passed in 1913, was called then the Native Land Act. The Land Act, by law, made black people to be aliens in the land of their birth. Or to describe it differently, this is the sort of mathematical description, that barely 13% of the land of South Africa belonged to black people, by law. So in other words, they redrew the map, geospatial mapping here. And that's where your homelands come from, Uri. Here we draw a line here, all the Xhosas, you live there. Draw a line here, all the Zulus, you live there. Draw a line here, all the Sothos, you live there. Draw a line there, all the Vendas, you live there. And so the big plan for apartheid was 10 independent homelands. That's where the homelands come from. So you're no longer a citizen in South Africa, you're a citizen in your homeland. They ran into a slight problem with the colored people in Cape Town. Where's the colored people's homeland? where? And that discussion is still happening today. Because some colored people say, no, but the whole of the Cape is our homeland. And so there's a group, Cape Exit, for example, that says, no, the Cape Colony, that's us. So these are not resolved issues. Because there isn't yet a coagulation, if you will, a unity of the soul of our country. There isn't yet that reconciliation where there's a shared narrative about our past. Because it's a contested past. And it's contested mainly, I would assert, because people don't have the full picture of the past. I don't want to say they're ignorant because that sounds very terrible. But if you only have a piece of the story, then you only have a piece of the truth. So let's get as full a picture as possible of the past. So let me come back to my very terrible map here, but anyway. So 1994, democracy arrived.